Today, we're bringing in the heat with San Antonio, Texas.
Welcome to Vacation Mavens, the podcast that brings you travel inspiration and practical tips from two moms who know how to plan the perfect trip.
I'm Tamara from Your Time to Fly.
And I'm Kim from Stuffed Suitcase. With over 40 years of travel experience between us, we're here to share our favorite destinations from road trips to cruising, theme parks, and European adventures.
Whether you're planning a family vacation or a mom getaway, we have the tips and tricks to make memories that will last a lifetime.
So, Tamara, I was able to visit San Antonio. Actually, I went there once with a friend after I was in college in Texas for a year. And then more recently, I went there for a conference. But I know you got to be introduced to the city just recently. So I thought maybe today we'd talk about, what you liked, what you did, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I was brought in for a media visit. It was something I was supposed to do back in the springtime for one of the special events that was going on, I think Fiesta. But then I wasn't able to travel at that time. So I went on my own, but it was a kind of a press trip. So it was hosted by Visit San Antonio. And I really wanted to see what there was to do for families because I had definitely thought of it. I'm not surprised that you went for a convention because I really do think of it as like a place where there's a lot of like conferences and conventions. And what I thought of San Antonio was basically like the Alamo, which most people come back and they're like, oh, that was disappointing. That was like small or whatever. Yeah. Or the Riverwalk. And I was picturing something that was like along the lines of Bourbon Street or Duval Street, something that's just like super touristy, crowded, that kind of thing. So I was actually really surprised by San Antonio. And I've visited a few Texas cities now. I feel like I haven't spent a ton of time in Texas, but I've been to Dallas a couple times, briefly to Houston. I've been to Austin a couple times, El Paso, you and I were in together. But I found like San Antonio really had more of a cultural feel than I found in some of those other cities. Maybe it's just what I was looking for, but I just really felt like they do a really good job of trying to preserve the neighborhoods, preserve the culture. And so it felt more vibrant, I think, in that way. And maybe more, some cities can feel a little more impersonal, like they're big cities where people live and work, whereas this felt like a place where you want to visit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I got that vibe from San Antonio, more so the more recent trip I went on, because I think I was just more cognizant having traveled more than when I was there in college after my first year of college. I absolutely agree. I think it's a great city with some really interesting, it's just not, some of the cultures they bring in also are not maybe what you would immediately think of being in Southern Texas. So I think that's cool too.
Yeah. And I was surprised too that it was a little more affordable than I would have expected. There were a lot of really amazing free parks. And, it just, when you think about places, you and I were just talking before we got on this recording about how expensive like hotels can be and all of that. And that's still the case. It's always nice when you can find free things to do within a city or just things to enjoy. And it made me realize that it could be not just like a weekend getaway, but you could actually use it as like a family vacation destination. Although I would say probably better for a winter break or spring break when it's not,
not
100 and some degrees.
Yeah.
Because
I think that's,
I was there in October and it was still like 90 degrees.
Wow.
But luckily not humid. I don't know why I was thinking I was comparing it to Houston, which is on the Gulf, and Houston is so humid. So at least it was like drier. So it wasn't as bad. But yeah, it's warm there. And everybody's like, oh, it's so nice. Like we want to go to use the rooftop bars now because it's cooling off. And I'm like, excuse me, cooling off?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. When I was there, I would say it really spoke to me as a great girls trip destination, or especially a couples getaway, especially for people in the Midwest. If it's easy for you to get down there, I think it's just a fabulous place for those demographics. But I know that you went with the family idea of how well it works for families. And I know that San Antonio, you recently told me that they're like the thrill theme park capital of Texas, which is just awesome. So I'm sure that's going to come into play a little bit about some of the things you did. So why are they the theme park capital of Texas?
Yeah, so they have 4 theme parks and water parks, like either within the city limits or like within an hour drive. And that doesn't even count. There's also the San Antonio Zoo. There's like a sea life aquarium. There's one of the Legoland Discovery Centers, like all right in downtown. But they have the largest SeaWorld of the 4 SeaWorld parks.
Yep.
And as SeaWorld is more than just like the animals, it is definitely the place to go for like the crazy roller coasters. Because they always have something this is the tallest, longest, fastest something. They're always like breaking some kind of barrier there. But I don't know if you've ever been to like SeaWorld in Orlando, but those roller coasters, I'm not a coaster person. So I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'll just take a look. But they have that. And with SeaWorld San Antonio, there's also Aquatica, which is their water park. There's Six Flags Fiesta Texas. So that's a large Six Flags that also has the Hurricane Harbor water park. There is the Schlitterbahn park,
Yep.
which is like a huge, I didn't get to go to that. It was not open while I was there. And actually, even SeaWorld and Six Flags, you have to pay attention. They're mostly like open every day of the week during the summer. And then after that, you need to pay attention to their dates. Like when I went, it was more like Halloween time. So they were having some like Fright Fest and special events and like Boo something. Like SeaWorld had trick or treating for the little kids during the day and then something scarier at night. But it was only like Thursday through Sunday. So you have to pay attention if you are traveling outside of the summer and want to do the theme parks, just like look into that ahead of time. But the Schlitterbahn water park, I've never been to one of these, but it sounds huge. They were saying that there's 4 different regions or areas within the
Like
park.
lands.
And each one of them is like its own water park. Yeah. And there's even a resort there. So if you did want to go during the summer and stay there, I think if you stay there, then your water park admission is free.
I know they had opened a Schlitterbahn in Kansas City area or something along those lines, but not when we lived there. So I hadn't been to it. I wonder if the Texas one is one of the largest or something. It just seems like Texas has so much land. So I think it's a really,
it's easy
really
to
easy place to go big. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the other place that I got to tour, it wasn't open that day, but I got to tour, is really special. And you may know this one too.
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
trying to remember if I know it's been talked about through the Family Travel Association, but it's called Morgan's Wonderland.
Yeah. I think one of
And-
our interviewees, one of our past podcast episodes also brought that up. So,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, that's right. It was quite a long time ago, but it is billed as the ultra accessible amusement park, and it is really meant, it's built from the ground up for people that have different types of special needs. And it is amazing when you speak to them to understand the level of like research and thought that went into every single attraction and ride there, because they're trying to make sure that everyone is feeling welcome and is able to participate and able to play. So you have everything from the carousel doesn't have flashing lights or loud music for people that might have sensory issues or seizure type issues, and to the fact that every ride except for the zip line has some type of roll-on access in a wheelchair. And even things like the play areas have a double wide ramps so that if you're in a wheelchair but your friend isn't or your brother isn't or whatever, like you run up it together and when you're able to play together and not feel like, oh, I have to wait my turn on this little ramp. And everything is just designed. It's just so thoughtful and it's
Great.
really amazing. I wish that more families could access this. It is obviously when you have special needs, it's a little bit harder to fly and travel. The San Antonio airport is going through a certification process for accessibility. So like more and more airports are working on things like that as well. I think the airlines could use some help because it's not always so good, even just for the other passengers.
Exactly.
It's just a really special place. So definitely if you're in driving distance and that is something that would be of interest to your family, like they have 25 attractions. They've added a water park as well. And in the water park, they have things that like they have a waterproof wheelchair valet. If you have a motorized wheelchair, obviously you're not going to go through a splash pad in that, right? They will bring you in and they will put you into one of the ones that you can borrow. And there's these amazing changing rooms that even have lifts and it's just everything is thought of. It's really impressive, even to the point that if someone is visiting with disabilities, if they ask, they can get in without being charged, which I don't even imagine how they do that. Obviously, they have to get a lot of funding. And it's not something that's like automatic because obviously they don't want to make that decision for someone else
Mhm.
either. And there is also something like, I think it's called the Joy Pass, Access Pass, but it's, you know how last episode you were talking about the Access Pass from Disney
Yeah.
and how that's become more difficult to get. So
Yep.
they have their own version of that. I'm sure the lines are never as long as a Disney line,
Yeah.
but they do have their own lane. So if you go and you ask for that, and they do not ask you why you're asking for it, it's an honor system. So they will provide that. And so you can go on that lane as well. So it's really nice. It's really special. It's not huge, but it's very close to downtown San Antonio. And I feel like it's just a really special place.
It's fabulous that it was created with the intention of just allowing everyone to be able to go to a place and have fun and take part in some of those activities that traditionally would not be very accessible for either neurodivergent or physical difficulties.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah. So that's a lot of entertainment right there, families. And the next thing is none of these. The San Antonio Zoo is on this pass, but there's also a San Antonio City Pass, which is like a good cost saver. So like I had a City Pass and I used it to take a river cruise, like along the river walk.
One of those.
The Tower of Americas, which is one of those you go up and I think it's 750 feet. Like it looks a lot like the Space Needle in a way. And there's an observation deck. And then quite a few of the other museums are on it. So it's and the San Antonio Zoo. So it's a nice way to save when you're visiting
Does the
family.
Does the City Pass include any of the theme parks or just the?
No, that's what I was thinking at first, but no, it doesn't. It includes all those other things. But
nice. So we've talked a lot about theme parks and stuff. I know one of the things that I remember about my time in San Antonio was the food. So do you want to talk a little bit about what your food experience was in San Antonio? Because I think it was good. I'm willing to bet.
It was good. Yeah, definitely. And it was funny because the first night that I was there, I took a long walk on the river walk and I did not hit that downtown horseshoe section at all. I was just in this like beautiful, peaceful, more urban park, lush kind of setting of the river walk. And so I was thinking, oh wow, this is not what I expected. I was expecting all these like touristy restaurants. And the next day I go and I see like the Rainforest Cafe and the Hard Rock Cafe and Dick's Last Resort and like Fat Tuesdays. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I was expecting. But there is plenty of like things beyond the touristy kind of chain restaurants that you might be familiar with. And I would definitely encourage you to do that. And you can break it down by district. So I think especially for everybody, but for couples, for girls getaways, but even for families, there's this district called the Pearl. Did you go there?
We did. Yes. I got to tour the hotel that was there. And then I think we ate there. Oh, I think we just had a tour and drinks. I don't remember a lot of what it was conference stuff. So it wasn't like publicly facing stuff. Yeah. But I do know the district. Yeah.
The Pearl it used to be a brewery. So it's like multiple buildings and then it sat vacant for a while. And then it's been revitalized into kind of a mixed use, like residential, commercial and restaurants. So there's like this really amazing market there. There's a food hall. There's Hotel Emma that you mentioned. I walked in there too. And wow, that looks fantastic. If you're going for
amazing.
A romantic getaway or a girl's getaway, like Hotel Emma, the bar there was insanely cool. Like definitely.
They had amazing cocktails there and they have that whole like library area and all that area.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And then the rooms are all very unique kind of too, because it's in the old building. So some of them have, the rooms are really cool too. So It was a fabulous hotel. I did not stay there, but I wished I would.
I didn't stay there either. And then, but there's a lot of open space there. There were like, you could get a drink or food from the food hall, sit on these outside tables. And then there's this big green grassy area where kids can just run around and play. And I think they do like live music and other things at different times too. So it's definitely like a entertainment district. And there's quite a few different restaurants there. The one that I ate at was called Best Quality Daughter, and it was Chinese American cuisine. And that one, I think it was really cute. It looks like I think it's pink. It looks like a little house. So the rooms are broken up into different rooms. I was there by myself, which was a bummer because everything was shareable. Like all the main courses are like family style to share. And I'm like, I don't want to get that. So I just got a couple of appetizers. It was yummy. So and I think that goes to what you're saying is that you expect when you go to San Antonio that you're going to have only like Tex-Mex or you're going to have barbecue, but there is definitely a lot of other cultures that are influencing the cuisine there. Oh, and one thing that I should mention, I don't know if you knew this, but San Antonio is actually a UNESCO Creative City of Gastronomy.
Yes, I do remember. Yep,
And there
you
are
told me
only
that.
2 cities in the US that have that designation. It's basically a designation that looks at like the heritage of the cuisine and maintaining that unique
Yep.
heritage. And the other city is Tucson.
Oh, right. We
I've now
talked
been to
about that.
both.
You've been to both.
Yeah.
Congrats for you. Seattle is an UNESCO City of Literature.
Hmm.
So if you're into book reading and stuff like that. So yeah, sorry, that's my little contribution.
I feel like when I was in Paducah, Kentucky, they're the UNESCO Creative City for something, and they have the National Quilting Museum there, and it's like a
Oh,
quilt, like they have
maybe
quilts come from
fabric
around
arts
the
or something.
world. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
So it's really funny when you can find these little like things that you would never know about.
Yeah.
So that was good. And the other district, it looks a little bit more residential, like it's not a fancy area, but it's called Southtown. And if you're going to go, which we'll jump back to in a minute, but there are other missions beyond the Alamo that you can visit, and you can even bike along or you can kayak, whatever. So we'll talk about that in a second. But in Southtown, if you're in that area, there's a lot of like really good, authentic Mexican cuisine. One place I went to is called Eddie's Taco Shop, and we went for breakfast.
Yum.
They had the best flour tortillas that I've ever had, like handmade flour tortillas.
Oh, yum. Yeah.
Oh, I would have just a stack of them. And this is so not the way you would have it, but I could just picture like putting some butter on it and rolling it up and eating it that way. But anyway, and I also went to a place called Burger Teca. So it's like Mexican style burgers and other kind of things. So it's by a chef that has like quite a few different restaurants in that area. But there's a lot of like cute, cool places like within that neighborhood. But I would say most people may not think to go, like you need a car. It's not like you're walking there from downtown.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And then the other, like just even downtown, like if you step away from the actual river walk, if you just like at street level, there's a lot of good places too. But actually, some of my best food was like a little bit on the outskirts. If you do have a car or if you're staying at one of the resorts, because there's quite a few really nice resorts, which we can talk about too, like in hill country. So just like outside of San Antonio, if you have a car, there's some really good places. One that I went to is called Sticks and Stone, and it was actually like Mexican Asian fusion cuisine. And my goodness, it was amazing. Like such good, like these sticky ribs. And what else did I love there? The barbacoa taco. One thing that I learned is that do you know this? Is Big Red a drink? Is that like a soda?
I just know the gum, like it's like cinnamon gum.
So there's this thing called like Big Red and Barbacoa, and there's like a festival.
Oh,
even.
yeah. I didn't know the Big Red soda, but I know about using Dr. Pepper for your barbacoa.
Yeah.
Like pulled pork and
So it
stuff
must be
like that.
something
That's
like
a common
that.
thing. That's
Yeah.
a very common barbecue thing. Yep.
And so their Big Red and Barbacoa taco was unbelievable. And I learned that locally, like culturally, that barbacoa is something that people would eat on Sunday mornings for breakfast. And it was a good week if you had barbacoa on Sundays. And I was like, interesting. So cool when you get to talk to people and learn these kind of little things.
That's cool.
Another
You got to
place that
experience a little bit of that.
Really loved was called the Jerk Shack, and this was located like close to SeaWorld. So if you're doing like a SeaWorld day and you don't want to pay like park prices, or you want to go to dinner there or lunch there, so it's like jerk chicken, but they had the best empanadas, like super like, crispy but not thick, like a thin crispy crust that wasn't greasy. It was the best.
Interesting. That sounds fabulous. Yeah, so it's almost like like gyoza but fried.
Yeah.
Sounds yummy.
Yeah, that super yummy.
Good. Nice. Okay, so we've talked food. We talked about any other things that you did a little bit that you want to mention, like some fun things you did?
Yeah, I would say that some of the things, so everyone was familiar with the Alamo. So just a couple of points about the Alamo is number one, if you don't know the history of the Alamos, basically it was a mission where there was a battle between the Texans and the Mexican army. The Mexican army actually won at that time. And then Remember the Alamo became like the battle cry where eventually the Texans won their independence. But because there was a battle there, the Alamo itself, like there's not a lot to see. It's like a church that everything inside is faded. There's just not a lot to see there. There was a battle that took place there. And most people think it's like smaller than they thought. So they're actually going to be refurbishing some of the Alamo. So if you want to see it as it is now, you need to go before like May of 2025, because then for a couple of years, it's going to be covered in like a metal structure where they work on the roof. So it's like, you might want to get there before then or wait until after, because it's going to see, I remember like Big Ben in London was covered with scaffolding for a while. So it's not quite the same. But the other surprising thing there is that there is right now a small like exhibits hall that has part of a collection, but you'll never believe, or maybe you will because you probably have been there, but who donated this collection? It's the largest collection of Alamo artifacts in the world. And it was donated, and it's going to be in a brand new museum when it opens in a year or two, by Phil Collins.
Oh, random.
Yeah.
Is he Texas-based? Like, is
No,
he from
he's British.
Oh, yeah.
So-
But did he ever, I didn't know if he,
Apparently, he
like,
got
what?
obsessed with Davy Crockett and maybe even through something on Disney, and he just started to, a lot of people really love Western cowboy kind of stuff.
Oh, I know. Yes.
So
I was at an international conference in San Antonio, and the barbecue booth ran out of food in no time at all because the entire international delegates, like everyone wanted to go eat that. So yeah, there's a huge, and they all want cowboys and pictures with cowboys.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, Phil Collins apparently has like thousands and thousands of artifacts that he's donated. So they're going to be opening like a new museum that will go with it too. So that I think will become more interesting. But there are actually all of these, there's 4 other missions that are run by the National Park Service. And I know that when I say missions, like I know you think of like California, and there's obviously like a difficult history, will I say, when it comes to missions, because obviously they were built by Spaniards that were colonizing and hoping to convert like the local indigenous people. So not the greatest
history, but important to know. Like, it's, if you want to go see the cool buildings, just understand the history of them. Right.
And it seems like in Texas, they did try to convert the local indigenous people, but if they didn't want to convert, they weren't forced to. So they weren't. So it was supposedly like then when like raiders or other people would come, like everyone was welcomed into the compound and it was used to protect and all of that. Yeah. Whatever. I look at it as it is a part of the history.
It is a part of
area.
I agree with that in California. Yeah,
you know?
I absolutely agree with that about California and all the missions. Go see them. It's great. Just understand the history behind them, because it's important for us to remember that. It's important
and
to
acknowledge it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So there's one of the missions called Mission San Jose, which is actually way more to see there than the Alamo. And the church inside has been like restored. So it's actually, you feel like you actually have something to see and look at. So if you want to do that, like there are 4 different missions. They're actually connected by a bike trail that goes along like the Mission Reach section of the Riverwalk. And they have like bikes that you can rent. Those how they have like city bike in some cities. It's called B-Cycle there. So you can just like, scan your card, rent a bike, and you can bike from mission to mission or just bike along the river there. And one of the things that I did along that section of the river is go kayaking. So you can kayak. The river walk itself is 15 miles long. So people mostly think of like the horseshoe section downtown where there's all the restaurants, but the Mission Reach and then what goes from like the Pearl to downtown is called the Museum Reach. Those are actually like really quiet, really lush. Like I had said before, more of an urban park, but the Mission Reach section is like really, you can't believe that you're like in San Antonio. So I went kayaking. It was so peaceful, so quiet. I saw multiple heron, hawks, turtles. They say sometimes you can see like bobcats along those trails. So definitely if you wanted to experience San Antonio the natural side, I would say you could either bike or walk or kayak along that Mission Reach section would be definitely a lot of fun. And those, like the B cycles, if you want to bike, like that's a really cheap outing, and then it's free to go to visit these missions, so that can be a fun day. And then even in downtown there's some really nice parks. So when I went to one of the museums, it's called the Whitty Museum. It looks at the area's history going all the way back to prehistoric times. So it's an amazing museum for kids because there's let's be an archaeologist and let's like dig for dinosaur bones. And there's all kinds of dioramas. It's like super interactive. So it's a great family oriented kind of museum, but it's in this Breckenridge Park that also has picnic areas, the San Antonio Zoo, like bike paths and walking paths, but it has a Japanese tea garden, which is just really beautiful and zen. And you can just make a day of doing either the museum or the zoo and then having a picnic and enjoying the park. And then for little kids, there's a park near the Tower of the Americas right in downtown called Hemisphere. And it was built, I think, for a World's Fair. And that's why it's called that. But it has splash pads and little pools and climbing structures. So if you're going, I know that obviously our kids are way past this age, but if you're going with like really little kids, there's a lot of like fun playgrounds and parks and things that you can do there too.
Nice. We are getting a little long, but why don't we wrap up with you telling us where you stayed? Because I know I will say, I think in that area of San Antonio, there are some great hotels and with some variety. So even though it is probably popular with conventions, you can find a nice hotel easily.
Yeah, there's tons of hotels that are right on the Riverwalk. Where I stayed it's really brand new. It opened in August, is the Intercontinental. And it's right on the Riverwalk, but on the quieter section. So it's not in that like super busy area. It was beautiful hotel. Intercontinentals are very nice hotels. So it's definitely going to be more on the luxury side. But it had a restaurant, it has a rooftop pool bar, a little coffee shop. So it was really nice service. I had turn down service. Half the time you don't even get regular service. So it was, and really nice bathroom. And I just want to say the best towels. I don't know if it's because it was like such a new hotel, but sometimes like the towel can barely wrap around you. These are like those nice big like bath sheets that are super fluffy. So I know it's so minor, but like little things.
No, I'm always big on when the towels are fluffy, but I want them to still absorb. I hate when they're like the fluffy and anyways.
And the thing that drives me crazy though with towels, I'm always one where I'm like, yes, I will hang it so that you don't need to change it. And then I come back and there like is another folded stack of towels. And I'm like, so did you just fold up my towel that was drying, or did you take it when I didn't want you to take it? But I will say, if you don't want to stay in downtown, there are some really great resorts. There's like the Hyatt Regency Hill Country, which has like a lazy river and a water park and like a flow rider wave machine. There's the JW Marriott Hill Country. So there's definitely really nice like resort properties too. If you wanted, especially if you're going maybe in the summer and you want to spend more time like in the pool than just a little bit of other time seeing the sights. So there's plenty of options for sure.
I've heard about Hill Country a lot. I didn't realize it was that close, but I know that it's very popular for wildflowers, like bluebonnets or something like that. I think in Texas. Yeah. If I recall correctly. Great. Thanks so much for sharing. And it sounds like you liked it too. I was pleasantly surprised with San Antonio. So I would encourage all of our listeners to consider it if you're looking for a new place to discover.
Yeah.
Great. We will be back with you guys soon. And I'm going to be sharing all about my convenient little weekend getaway to another country. So I'll just leave everyone with that.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Well, if you liked this episode, I hope that you will subscribe and also rate and review. That always helps us be found. And if you want to see more, you can follow me, Tamara, on @YourTimeToFly on Instagram and Facebook and all of the others.
And of course, you can follow me, Kim, at Stuffed Suitcase, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, my blog.